أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم ملك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كلنا آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. آمنت بالله لا إله إلا الله سيدنا محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful, and peace and blessings be upon His messenger, His family, His offspring, and all His companions to the day of judgment. Welcome everybody tonight to this program. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it a blessed one. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it beneficial for all of us and for the entire community. A special welcome to our brothers and sisters in the AMAC. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless their efforts and to give them success in every step that they take in this regard, which is promoting justice and engaging the community in the civic part of the community. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept from them and to put barakah in what they do. Ameen, ameen. So again, on behalf of the MCK, welcome everyone. Jazakumullah khair.
Shukran, Sheikh Khalid. I think we're going to do just quick introductions of each of ourselves, and then Sister Sabina will start us off. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Maryam Hussain. I'm a child of this community here in Knoxville. I'm a community organizer, and I'm a member of Voter Education Fund here. Yes, that's me. I'll pass it on. Go.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you all for having us. My name is Zufat Swara. Alhamdulillah, I had the opportunity to chair AMAC from 2002 up till 2017, 2019, somewhere there. And then in 2019, alhamdulillah, I got elected to be on Metro Nashville Council as an at-large council member. And during my daytime, I serve as the Executive Director of Grants and Contracts at Mariam Medical College. So it's a pleasure to be with you.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome here today. My name is Sabina Mohyuddin. I am the Executive Director of the American Muslim Advisory Council. It is a pleasure to be back in Knoxville. I had two daughters graduating from UT Knoxville, so it's just last time I came was 2019. So I'm excited to be back here. And today is a workshop on building power through advocacy. So learning how to effectively advocate for our community. And the American Muslim Advisory Council, we're doing these workshops across the state. So tonight in Knoxville, tomorrow in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, next weekend two in Memphis, and then we'll have another one in Nashville. So we are really excited to be able to share our knowledge and to really get the community excited about getting more civically engaged. So, and go on to the next slide. So I wanted to just kind of share why I am passionate about civic engagement. In the Quran, Allah says in Surah Al Imran, in Ayat 104, be a community that calls for what is good, urges what is right, and forbids what is wrong. Those who do this are the successful ones. As a Muslim, living wherever we are, in the neighborhoods we live in the communities we are from, in the cities we are in, the state, the country, wherever we are, we should bring good to our neighbors. We should be that force of good, standing up for what is right, bringing justice, and not just for our own family or our own fellow Muslims, but for everyone around us, because that is our duty towards Allah. So a little bit more about the American Muslim Advisory Council. Change the slide. So it's incredible. It's been an incredible journey, but we are 10 years old this year. And we were formed after there was a particularly an unprecedented attack on the Muslim community in 2011. There was an anti-Sharia bill in the Tennessee State Legislature. And there's some history behind why this bill was introduced. In 2010, the Islamic Center of Murfreesboro got permission to build a new facility. And there was a lot of opposition that summer of 2010. And a lot of politicians got involved. It was very ugly, and there were lawsuits against it. Well, then you turn around in 2011, and the state legislature thought, how can we stop the building of this masjid? And so they introduced this anti-Sharia bill, which in the beginning, it was about making it illegal to follow regular religious rituals in Islam. But after protesting against it, they changed it, and they used it, instead of saying Sharia in the bill, they were saying terrorist. But the intent of the bill was the same. It was to somehow stop mosques from being built in Tennessee, and especially a backhanded way of stopping the building of the Islamic Center of Murfreesboro. And the legislators who introduced this bill, they thought, well, there's not too many Muslims in Tennessee. We don't see them anywhere. They don't have a voice. We'll just ram this through the legislature. Who's going to protest? Who's going to say anything? But what they did not expect is that you don't mess with our community. We organized. We brought Muslim leaders across Tennessee, from Knoxville, Memphis, and in Nashville. And we went and talked to the legislators. We worked with allied groups, and we pushed back. We used the media where it made sense. And on one day, and this is a picture on this slide, there were over 300 Muslims at the state capitol. You know what one of the police said there? He was like, I have never seen so many Muslims in my life. But we showed up in numbers. We made our voice heard. And for all practical purposes, that bill was defeated. And it showed us the power if we're united and we're speaking and we're advocating for ourselves, not waiting for someone else to take the lead. And so after the anti-Sharia bill, we realized, mashallah, there are so many masjids across the state, but masjids work on the spiritual well-being of their community, and that we needed an organization outside the masjid who can really use their time and expertise to fight against Islamophobia. And that's why the American Muslim Advisory Council was founded. Next slide. So AMAC's focus is first and foremost fighting Islamophobia. And in fighting Islamophobia, that also means to make sure there's unbiased media coverage of our community, making sure that we are creating our own narratives. It is about building civic power, making sure that we're advocating for ourselves and we're out there voting. Elected officials know who we are. And youth and leadership development. To be a strong community, we have to have strong institutions, and we have to have leaders step up and do this important work. And you have a picture of an athlete in 2020, in 2019. She was a high school student, and she was disqualified from a volleyball game for wearing a hijab. And we spoke up with the TSAA, and we told them, no, this is unacceptable. And through her courage and the help of our allies, we were able to change the rule, not just on the state level, but on the national level. Next slide. So again, I mentioned how we help build community through leadership development. We advocate for our community and building civic power. We also connect community members to resources. I think it's very important. A community that thrives is a community that is well-resourced. And so making sure that our community gets the resources they deserve. We have a program called Muslim Resource Services, and we have monthly webinars. And it's on our Facebook page where you can learn about different resources. We've learned about mental health resources, free tax preparation through the VITA program, and rent relief, just to name a few things. And we also do education programs in the community. And sometimes it means cultural competency education. So we've worked with law enforcement in teaching them how to interact with our community with respect. And we've also worked with other nonprofits so to help them understand who our community is. So some of that work right now across the state is working with the Afghan refugees and making sure they're connected with the resources that they need to thrive. So next slide. So let's look at this survey from the Institute of Social Policy and Understanding. It's from 2016 to 2020. The number of unregistered Muslim voters have dropped in half. And I think that's an important point to make, that Muslims are, by and large, across the country, realizing that they're starting to understand the importance of voting and getting out there and being civically engaged. Go on to the next slide. So also the survey from ISPU shows, but even though more Muslims are registered, we still lack we still fall behind in the number of registered voters among faith groups. So you can see in the Jewish community, 90% of them are registered to vote, whereas in the Muslim community, it's only 78%. And when I say 78%, 78% of those who qualify to vote. So we still have work to do in making sure our community is registered to vote. There was another study done that showed that when a Muslim actually meets an elected official in some kind of programming, maybe at the masjid, maybe at a town hall, they're more likely to vote. They're more likely to continue to be civically engaged. And that's why today we have Councilmember Zufat with her, because it inspires you. And you realize that elected officials are actually approachable, and it's important to have your voice heard. The picture down there was a candidate forum that we had in 2019 in Nashville, and that is Mayor John Cooper. He was running for the position at that time, and he later became the mayor of Nashville and is currently serving as the mayor of Nashville. But he came to the masjid for a candidate forum. So that was a wonderful event. Next slide. So getting involved matters. You know, in Nashville, I say we're very lucky. I cannot even tell you the full extent how it has helped our community having elected officials in office, especially Zufat Suera. It helps our community understand how the local government works, and she can make sure our issues are being heard, whether it's in the city council or where she has those connections. She's able to connect our community to resources. So another elected official, well, she wasn't elected technically, but Dr. Bertina Namab McKinney, there was a vacant seat in the school board, and she was elected by the council to fill that seat until the next election. So she filled it for a couple of months, but then she lost the 2020 elections. So now she's running again for the 2022 elections for District 4. So again, seeing a Muslim there in this space makes you, it gives you a lot of hope. And also, it's having the voice in these halls of power who will represent us and bring up our issues. In Nashville, we also have Muhammad Shukri Hassan, and he serves as the director of the mayor's office of New Americans. And again, he has the mayor's ears. So when he sees issues in the New American or immigrant community, he can bring it up with the mayor. So having our own elected officials in power is very important. And so I hope you get inspired from hearing Zulfat's story later on. And next slide. So I wanted to give an example. We've done a lot of advocacy work over the last 10 years, but I wanted to give you a recent example, and this is work that we've done on the state level. So Lori Cardozo-Moore was nominated for the Tennessee State Textbook Commission. So you have to know what her background is. She led an organization that headed the lawsuit against the building of the Islamic Center of Murfreesboro. So she was a known Islamophobe who was being appointed to the Textbook Commission. So she had a long history of anti-Muslim bigotry. And then she promoted false historical narratives against diversity. And we see that a lot of people who are Islamophobic are also anti-diversity. And so we needed to do what we could to stop it. So we partnered with different organizations. And first thing we did is we had a sign-on letter where we had over 500 people sign on from across the state asking House Speaker Cameron Sexton to rescind the nomination. And so he didn't do it, but it was important to show that, wait, we can mobilize people from across the state, and there were important leaders in the city, in the state. There were well-known names who signed that letter, and that was very important. And then we worked with the Jewish Federation to write a letter to Cameron Sexton. They did not join our letter, but we pushed them to write a letter against her nomination also. And then we worked with National Organized for Action and Hope, NOAA, and we wrote an op-ed exposing who she really was, because she was trying to make it sound like, well, she's just a homeschooling mother who wants the best for her child. But we exposed her Islamophobic and racist views. And so as her appointment was going through the legislature, it had to go through the Education Instruction Committee. And so that's where we reached out to the committee members and we told them, this is Lori Cardozo-Moore history, this is what she's done, here are some of her own words showing how bad she is for this position. And this kind of advocacy work, it really paid off in terms of when we saw those committee hearings, we heard legislators use the exact words that we had shared with them to ask questions about her background. So they were challenging her. And then in Memphis, their community, they had a meeting with Mark White, who was the chair of the Education Committee. And, you know, he didn't know anything about it until we educated him about who Lori Cardozo-Moore. In Knoxville, we had some of our board members and AMAC board members here reach out to Representative Sam McKenzie. And he told, you know, after talking with him, he said, I'm not going to vote for her. I'm going to vote against her. So that kind of advocacy matters. She eventually got elected and appointed to the textbook commission, but it wasn't easy, smooth sailing as she thought it was going to be, or her sponsors thought it was going to be. And that was important that our voice was heard. And we made these connections with other allied groups. And so legislators know that we will push back. So they do have to think about, you know, when they propose a bill, think about the fact that we're watching. This is the next slide. This is a slide that gives you some idea of what kind of legislation goes through Tennessee. It's a restrictive measures map, and it just kind of tells you state by state what kind of restrictive laws are being introduced as bills or even passed as laws. And in Tennessee, they've been trying to restrict, and they've been introducing anti-immigration law bills, anti-refugee bills, of course, talked about the anti-Sharia, right to work, voter ID bills, redistricting. We saw that mess most recently. And this year, a lot of education bills that potentially harms our community. Next slide. So, you know, just 2 weeks ago, they approved, the governor, I think it was last week, the governor signed off on the new district maps. And it was a very partisan process. And at the end, if you looked at Nashville, that was always one district, District 5. It was split up into 3 districts, which would, basically reducing the power of the capital and the major city in Nashville. So next slide. So how do you get involved? So if you're a citizen, I tell you to vote. You need to vote. Vote in 2022, and we'll go over later. There are elections coming up in May, August, and November. You can join commissions and boards. That's another way to really get involved. And I'll let Mariam and Zufat talk more about that, but that's on the local city and county level. And that's the easy way to get involved and give back to your community. Regardless of citizenship, you can always, learn more yourself about the issues and educate your friends and family. You've got kids in school, attend school board meetings. A lot of important decisions are made about how our children are educated. Engage with local leaders, and then volunteer with AMAC and other civic organizations like the Voter Education Fund. The next slide. So with AMAC, or Voter Education Fund, how can you get involved? Get out the vote, attend a candidate forum. It's a great way to meet candidates and who will be your elected officials eventually. Register to vote, get your family and friends to register to vote, get on the local level, go to school board meetings, or any way to get involved in the schools. There are a lot of meetings around zoning, and we've known these types of meetings have restricted the building of mosques in other cities across the country. So it's good to keep our eye on what's going on. And then Muslim Day on the Hill. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Muslim Day on the Hill. Next slide. So for the last 4 years, every year we've had a Muslim Day on the Hill where we bring Muslims from across Tennessee to the Capitol in Nashville, and we make appointments with their legislators, their representatives, their senators, and some of the leadership in the Republican and Democratic Party. And we get to talk about the issues that matter to us, the bills that we are for or against, and we get the opportunity for those legislators to know who we are. So last year, our Muslim Day on the Hill was virtual because of COVID, but it was actually well attended, and we had, I think, nearly 40 people from across the state attend those meetings. So this year, it's on March 9th. It will be in person at the Capitol, and of all the work that I do, this is one of my favorite. Being at the Capitol, seeing how things work, and meeting with your legislators. It's from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. We give a little bit of a training before people go see their legislators. You don't have to have any experience whatsoever. If you've never been to the Capitol, if you've never met an elected official, don't worry. If you're scared of talking, you don't even have to say a word. But it's an opportunity, if you do want to talk, to share a little bit about yourself so they know who we are, that we're real people that live in their communities, in their districts. And you can register, you have to register for Muslim Day on the Hill so we can make those appointments. So the registration is on our website, amactn.org. And I'll share a little bit later a flyer. Next slide. So I wanted to introduce you a little bit to the legislative process. I'm not going to go over the federal, and I'll go over the state in more detail. But on the local level, obviously you have your county and municipal level. You have a mayor, city council, or county council. You have commissioners, and then other elected officials like school board or board of zoning appeals. So next slide. But I'm going to be more specific about the legislature. So how does the state government work? So how does a bill become a law? So first of all, a state representative or senator has to introduce a bill. And there's a deadline. And the legislative season goes from January till usually late April, early May at most. So they don't meet all year. They might have meetings outside that for special sessions, but otherwise it's January through usually April. But by early February, there's a deadline in which legislators can introduce bills. And then the bills will be given a number. and they'll all be giving a number. Now, for each bill, there has to be a House bill and then a companion Senate bill. So every bill will have two numbers, and it will be maybe HB 1080, and then HB meaning House Bill 1080, and then SB 1560. They'll have different, but they're the same bill, but one is going through the House, the State House, and the other one's going through the State Senate. And then it first will be heard in committees, subcommittees, and then it'll go to the full committee, and they'll vote for it. And if it passes the full committee, and you could, in the committees, amendments can be added. They will oftentimes ask for a fiscal note, meaning, if we implement this bill, will it cost the state a significant amount of money? Because sometimes that will kill a bill if it's going to cost the state a lot of money. And then once it passes the committee, then it will be put on the calendar to have a full vote, either in the House chambers, if it's the House bill, or in the Senate chambers, if it's the Senate bill. But once it passes both the House and Senate, then it goes to the governor, and the governor can sign it, or he can allow the bill to become law without his signature, or he can veto it. But if he does veto it, it can be overridden with a majority. So I want to be mindful of time. Okay. So next slide. So there's a great website. Tennessee Legislature, the Tennessee General Assembly, has a great website that I really encourage all of you to go and look through yourself. But in this website, if you're not sure who your state representative or senator is, you can actually go in there, put your address, and it'll pop up, and you'll know who it is. And then you can find out more about your state legislator, and it talks about, what their community involvement is, like what church they go to, what's their profession, what clubs they join. So when you go talk to them, you kind of have something to connect with them on. And then it tells you what committees they are assigned to. So committees are very important because it's kind of easier to sway committee members for or against a bill. On this website, you can also track bills. If you know the bill number, you can put it in and then see where this bill is. It's being heard in the committee. Did they vote on it? And you can actually watch committee hearings from your computer. So you don't have to be at the legislature to watch. They show it live, and they're supposed to upload the video later. And sometimes takes a while before they do that. And so I'm going to go just 1 minute into the website, the capitaltn.gov. You want to click it? So as you can see here, up top, on top, it says legislators. You can click that and you get a whole list of legislators. Legislation, that's the bills, videos, scheduling calendars, committees, and then up in the right corner says search for bills or legislators. If we can search for Sam McKenzie. Did that faster. So this, you can see here, you've got an address, you've got a phone number you can call. If you call him, he'll probably have his scheduler or someone answer. But even if you want to talk to him, you call that number and they'll pass on the message to him. You can get personal information, the committees he's in, community involvement, honors and award. And on the right side, where it says bills, if you click bills, then you see what the bills that he sponsored are. So I really encourage all of you to just kind of go through this website, look through it. Even on the search engine, you can put education bills, and all the education bills will pop up. So what interests you, you can search that. So let's go back to the slide presentation. So we're keeping up with legislation in this year's General Assembly. And so these were 3 bills that we were keeping a close eye on. And the first bill is HB, meaning House Bill 1676 by Representative Kapicki, and the companion bill is SB 1775 by Senator Hensley. And this basically says that there's a committee that determines the standards for our school, for math and language arts. And this is saying that the Tennessee State Board of Education can revise those standards if they disagree with those standards, or they can reject those standards if they disagree with it. And so we're against this because the people who sit on the standards committee are the experts in the field, and we don't think that the Tennessee Board of Education should overrule them. That can be dangerous in terms of if somebody doesn't like, say, talking about racism and from the state level, State Board of Education, and want to change those standards. So we were very troubled by that bill. So we're against it. And then below it says it's placed on House calendar for 2/14, which means that it's going to be heard by the full House. That means it's already passed the House committees, but it's being heard on the Senate Education Committee on 2/16. That means it's still in the committee level in the Senate. So again, you can track where the bill is on the House level, on the Senate level. Next bill is HB 26170 by Speaker Sexton. And it says, I'm just going to read, prohibits a public institution of higher education from taking certain actions with regard to divisive concepts and the ideologies or political viewpoints of students and employees. Fancy wording to say they are anti-diversity, equity, and inclusion. They want to keep any of this DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion work out of institutions like UT Knoxville, out of those higher education institutions. So, we already know the Office of Diversity had to be closed at UT because of legislation. So again, this is further, taking us back. So we're against this bill. And then the third bill that we actually support, HB 1004 by Representative Love. And this basically says that if you register to vote when you're in high school, what usually happens is when you vote for the first time, you have to vote in person, or you have to have someone from the election commission kind of certify that you are who you are. And so what happened before is when they were registering at school, then students were going off to college and they needed to do absentee voting. They couldn't do it because it would be their first time and they need to be in person. But so now it's saying the teachers will count as a deputy of the election commission. And so that will count as verifying their identity and they can vote absentee the very first time. So I think this is an important law for students going to college, because we know our kids go to college, they can go anywhere, right? And they might not be home during an election time. so that this makes sure they can still vote absentee. Next slide. Here's just some pictures of the House leadership. In the House, the Speaker of the House is Cameron Sexton, Republican, and then you have pro tem, and then the Deputy Speaker. But then you have your Republican leadership, William Lambert, Representative William Lambert, that's the Republican leader, and the Democratic side is Representative Karen Camper. And then you have your caucus leaders, which are kind of the heads of their party. And so in the Democratic side, it's Vincent Dixie, the caucus chairman, and on the Republican side is Representative Faison, who's the caucus chairman. So when we do the Muslim Day in the Hill, we try to make some of the appointments with these leaders. And we try to make it open to anyone who's there on that day to come and meet these leaders, because it's important for them to see us, really see us. Next slide. And these are the Senate leaders. So the Lieutenant Governor is actually the Speaker of the Senate. And then the Democratic leader, Jeff Yarborough, is the leader, and the caucus chairman is Ramesh Akbari, and Republican leader, Jack Johnson, and chairman, Ken Yeager. Next slide. So I hope all of you register for Muslim Day on the Hill. It's a fun day. We're looking into maybe getting some transportation to Nashville on that day. But tips for meeting with your legislators: be punctual or early. We make appointments. They have very busy schedule. They don't have time to be waiting around. If you miss your appointment, they're going on to their next appointment. Introduce yourself. Mention your district and organization name. A lot of legislators, they don't want to meet with, unless they're in leadership, they don't want to meet with people who are not in their district. So when we make the appointments, we make sure at least one person is in their district. And then it was okay to kind of add a few other people to that meeting. State your objective, be clear and to the point. Why you're there, what's important to you, the bills you're for or against. Use anecdotes, little stories, not long drawn out stories, but little stories of who you are, why an issue is important to you. Be open, listen. Give your elected official time to talk. We all want to be listened to. Be open, be honest, and if you can, get a commitment. Ask them, well, I oppose this, could you oppose it? Ask them that. Ask it directly. And if you get a photo, we love the pictures, and thank the legislator for their time. And you should always follow up with an email thanking them for the time. And it does go a lot of way, building a relationship. Oh, sorry. Important election dates, state, county, primary elections, May 3rd across the state. And a lot of these are local, judge, city, circuit court judge, but then also Board of Education seats are open this year. And then state, federal primaries are this summer, August 4th. And then the general election is November 8th. And next slide. And it's important to note that you have to be registered to vote 30 days before an election. So you can always, if you haven't registered, you can register. If you're not sure, if you recently moved, you really actually just register again. But you can also check your voter registration on the state website. It's a good website to register to vote. So I'm sure I talked much longer than I was supposed to, but I really love this work. Here's my contact information. I'm happy, like call me anytime, email me anytime with questions, any concerns. If you have an idea, if you know a bill, something's come up and you want to learn more about it, please reach out to me. The next slide, follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Please join you can join our mailing list from on our website is a sign up form. Our website is amactn.org. And above all, please register. Next slide. Yeah, Muslim Day on the Hill. So thank you. We'll do questions after Isha time. So be thinking about it, but I'll give it to Mariam.
Thank you, Sister Sabina. Real quick, what time does Isha call? Is it 8 o'clock? Is that when we need to pray Isha? Okay. Okay, we should call it then now. So I think we'll probably break for Isha now because I think it's just about to call. And then we'll come back, inshallah, afterward to do Q&A and for Sister Zufat and I to speak a little bit. That's cool, inshallah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
استووا يرحمكم الله. Yeah, sisters, if you can go back to the musalla, your musalla, inshallah, and pray. And join us afterwards, inshallah. استووا يرحمكم الله. The second row, inshallah, if you can just move towards the right, inshallah, make sure that the line is in the middle, inshallah. Allahu Akbar. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، ملك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سارعوا إلى مغفرة من ربكم وجنة عرضها السماوات والأرض أعدت للمتقين، الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس، والله يحب المحسنين. والذين إذا فعلوا فاحشة أو ظلموا أنفسهم ذكروا الله فاستغفروا لذنوبهم، ومن يغفر الذنوب إلا الله ولم يصروا على ما فعلوا وهم يعلمون. أولئك جزاؤهم مغفرة من ربهم وجنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار خالدين فيها، ونعم أجر العاملين. قد خلت من قبلكم سنن فسيروا في الأرض فانظروا كيف كان عاقبة المكذبين. هذا بيان للناس وهدى وموعظة للمتقين. ولا تهنوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين. إن يمسسكم قرح فقد مس القوم قرح مثله، وتلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس، وليعلم الله الذين آمنوا ويتخذ منكم شهداء، والله لا يحب الظالمين. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، ملك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الضالين. تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير، الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور، الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير، ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير، وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير، إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم ياتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Inshallah, we are going to pray the Sunnah, and after that, we come back to the QA session with our brothers and sisters in the AMAC. So, inshallah, stay with us, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And on behalf of you and the whole community and the MCK, we would like to thank the AMAC for taking the time and the effort to come and educate the community about their civic engagement and how they should be more involved, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah in their effort and time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put success and barakah in whatever alhamdulillah work they put together. Ameen, ameen, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. And inshallah, another reminder, this coming morning we have tahajjud at An-Nur Academy starting at 5:30 a.m. inshallah. The tahajjud starts at 5:30 and continues until Fajr prayer. So inshallah, the masjid will be open for those who want to come pray Fajr at 6:45. However, we encourage all the community to come to An-Nur Academy if it's easy for them, inshallah, to witness and to be part of the tahajjud, inshallah. This Saturday, tomorrow is at An-Nur Academy, and the following one will be at the Quran Center at the same time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Brothers and sisters, if we can please come back to the musalla so that we continue the program, inshallah. We have now the QA session, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I think we're going to get back started, inshallah, for the event. Oh, I forgot.
No, go get your notes.
Okay, we're going to start in 1 minute. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So I think we're going to go ahead and get back started here. I want to respect everyone's time, so I'm going to keep my piece short so we can hear from Sister Zufat longer, inshallah. So like I said, my name is Maryam Hussain. A lot of y'all know me. I grew up here in Knoxville. I wanted to give, we heard, mashallah, a lot about the state government and how that works and everything, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Knoxville and the history of Knoxville. So if any of you guys know, Knoxville is actually a pretty segregated city. We have, where it's pretty separated. So on East Knoxville, there's West Knoxville, South, and North. We're sitting pretty much in downtown region of Knoxville. But Knoxville is actually pretty racially divided. In the 60s and 70s, there's a process called urban removal. And what that process was basically the government decided that they wanted to increase tourism and what they called economic development in Knoxville. And so what they did was, instead of promoting economic well-being for the people who lived here, they wanted to bring people in from out of Knoxville. And so what they did is they built basically highways they basically created this barrier and separated East Knoxville from the rest of the city. They pushed a lot of Black neighborhoods out and pushed them more eastward, farther east, away from the rest of the city, and isolated them. They built the Knoxville Coliseum, the police department, all of that is just right down the street in, what's considered, the old city now, and a little bit, east of that. And, just basically further segregated Knoxville. This created, just further, economic hardship for those who didn't live in the predominantly white parts of Knoxville. So East Knoxville is predominantly Black, predominantly African American, and so that process that the city, basically the city planners created. They got what they wanted. They got the tourism. They got the white money spenders pretty much, and they pushed the African American community out of view of the tourists, right? And systems like that happen pretty much on a regular basis. So in the 1960s and 70s, that was urban removal. Today, that's called gentrification. And that happens, we're seeing that on the regular. We're seeing new apartment complexes go up in South Knoxville, in, even, North and East Knoxville as well. We're seeing, we have big developments coming into the city that aren't really necessarily intended to help those of us that already live here, right? Especially those of us that are, working class, those of us that are marginalized communities of people of color, working class, all of that, right? So all of that said to say, those decisions are made by the city government, right? We heard about state government. This is city government and county government that makes decisions like this. Planning decisions, zoning regulations. These decisions, another thing is, policing, right? So the policing budget is the city government pretty much makes those decisions. So I believe I think it was, Brother Mojo, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, a group called Rescue and Restoration started. It was basically a group of African American elders that got together and decided that they wanted to, make deep change in the community and try to help uplift the African American community in Knoxville. So they basically laid out a plan, and they laid out 4 pillars that they were going to basically use to uplift and push the African American community forward. One of those was education. One of those was financial disparities, so focusing on financial disparities. And then one of those was political, basically building political power. And from that came the Voter Education Fund. So the Voter Education Fund is basically a C3, a nonprofit that works to get voters, basically works to get Knoxvillians registered to vote. So we have a huge portion of Knoxville that doesn't vote, right? A huge portion of Knoxville that's not even registered to vote. And, there's a lot of history about, there's a lot of history in the United States, across the United States that, that people have been basically disenfranchised from the vote, right? So when people, for example, don't vote in 2 election periods back to back, they're purged, their voting rights are purged, meaning that they have to re-register to vote. If they're arrested and charged with a crime and they're a felon, they lose their right to vote immediately, right? All of these things are forms of, basically disenfranchising people. And unfortunately, a lot of that is done to marginalized communities in particular. It's deliberate a lot of times. So the work of Voter Education Fund is basically to push for a more just voting system, a more just, system of civic engagement. We have, we host what's called People's Assemblies, and People's Assemblies are basically they're popularized in Jackson, Mississippi, it's kind of like, basically it's a decision-making process that is, that uses basically true democratic processes where everyone basically comes together, breaks out into small groups and discusses a specific topic and comes up with a plan moving forward. It's a method to build community and to bring out, a truly democratic, decision-making process. So those are some of the things that voter education does locally. And I'm trying to speed up a little bit so we can hear from Sister Zufat. But Sister Sabina mentioned before, we have county elections coming up. So that's the mayoral election is coming up. We have, we have the sheriff election, judges, DA, all of those things are super important, and all of those things impact our daily lives, right? So the sheriff is an example of that. The sheriff has a huge impact on policing, right? And has actually participated in really, really racist anti-immigrant laws, right? 287G is a law that came out that our current Sheriff Spangler, basically has been very active in pushing forward to crack down on, immigration, right? We're a largely immigrant community, right? So that's something that directly impacts our Muslim community. So, and judges, of course, impact people, the injustice system. So a lot of these elections are coming up. Did you say May 3rd? May 3rd, right? So keep that on your calendars. Make sure that you're reading about, reading about elections, making sure you're kind of educating yourself and following these, these local issues that are happening around us, and get involved. We have the Voter Education Fund, we have AMAC, we have many, many different organizations that are working to, improve the lives of people all around us, right? I could name off so many. I work at an organization called SEED. That's another one. There's one called the Community of Defense of East Tennessee. There's so many ways that we can get involved, and it's our responsibility as Muslims, as community members, to be paying attention to what's going on around us, to our neighbors, even those that aren't a part of the Muslim community. There are siblings in society and humanity, and I think it's really important that we pay attention and focus on ways that we can help our people, right? Because we will not go anywhere until we all work together and build with each other and unify. That's the only way forward. And we have to, we really have to make sure that we're intentional about that, inshallah. So I don't want to take any more time away from Sister Zufat, inshallah, so I'll pass it on. But thank you guys for being here.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So I will not repeat most of what he said. I just want to build on some of the things that they've talked about. And I want to stress a couple of things. I was taking notes. I think the dates for the election that they mentioned is very key. And I hope that you all remember those dates. April 4th is the last day to register to vote. May 3rd is a big election in Knoxville. There's about 34 positions. It's Eid also, so good. You go do Eid and then you go from Eid. In fact, the story is that before, the black churches used to vote a lot on Sundays. And after Sunday services, they would put people on the bus and go vote. And that's one of the reasons why the state stopped us from voting on Sunday. So now we have Eid as a voting day, alhamdulillah. So the masajid should have a bus. Find out what is the voting location close to this place. Get people said you will not get the Eid breakfast until you show your voting sticker and get people to go vote. So why is it that we're not as involved? We're 78% those that could vote are only voting. What is the problem? A lot of us don't think that this issue affects us. And I'm here to tell you that that is wrong. All the issues that are being discussed, whether at the federal level impacts, but more importantly on your state and your local level, directly affects you. So when your school board is making a decision about what's happening in the school, those are your kids, your grandkids that are in school. And if you even think, no, I don't have any kids in the school, well, guess what? When your education in your system is messed up or not fully funded and the graduation rate is low, the per capita in your community goes down. Your housing is affected. The investment that comes to your community is affected. The job that comes to your area is impacted. So at the end of the day, your taxes is impacted, because at the end of the day, it's going to affect you. So it's a religious obligation, but it's also a moral one and a civic one. And I think we all need to take it important. The other thing that I also want to address is that when we're talking about issues, people think my vote doesn't count. Why should I get involved? They've already decided anyway. That is the wrong way to think. In Nashville, we had a council, a district council, that was decided by one vote. One vote. So you deciding not to vote that day could determine who gets to make the decision for you and your family. People tell me that Tennessee is a Republican state. Why should we get involved? And I always remind them that Bill Clinton won Tennessee. We've had a Democratic governor before. It wasn't too far long ago that we had Bredesen. So what made it happen? People came out, people voted. So we cannot give up. We have to keep doing it. And I also want to tell you, sitting in front of you today, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, if people did not come out and vote for me, I will not be elected. So it does matter. So I'm going to encourage you as an elected official. The first thing I will say is that if you can run for office, I have to put that out there. We have a big community, we have the numbers. We can map out the district and see where people are living and put up a candidate. There's a difference between being an advocate, I was that for so many years, and being an elected official. You're doing Muslim Day on the Hill to go talk to somebody about what to do. You don't need to talk to me because I know what to do. It's my life, right? That is the importance of having somebody that knows the community to be in the office. So we need to start working towards getting our community, inshallah, to be involved and running for office. If we cannot do that, the next best thing is for us to make sure that the people that we're electing are people that will represent our community. So how do you do that? You make sure when somebody comes here, and they will come here during election time, they will go to mosque. I went to churches too when I was campaigning. It's part of it. They will come here and ask for your vote. Make sure to ask them questions. Why should I vote for you? What is your stand? Where do you stand on these specific issues? Then after you vote them in, make sure that you're watching what they're doing and you're holding them accountable. Make sure that you watch your county commission's meeting and listen to what they're talking about. As an elected official, when I'm about to vote on something, some things I know my stand on, but there's some things that I'm not sure about. I listen and look at what everybody is saying. Even things that I think I know they stand, I still feel the pulse of the community. So I look at the emails that I get. What are the people saying about the issues? Same thing at the state legislature. People would, even at the federal level, they would tell you what people are contacting them about. And that's how you get them to know whether you support something or you don't support it. I'm going to encourage you, when they were showing the state legislature, same thing with your local elected officials. They are in your community. Their kids go to school with your kids. You meet them at Walmart. Get to know them outside of when you have an issue with them. Support them and talk to them outside of when the issue comes. So when the issue does come, you already have a relationship with them and you can raise it. I will advise you, don't just be interested in Muslim issues only. Be interested in every issue. Education is our issue. Housing is our issue. Poverty is our issue. So let's speak about all the issues so that when you go in front of someone and talk about Muslim issue, it would just be, they will not turn you out because they know you're actually vested in the community. So those are some of my advice for you. Does it matter? Yes, it does. I will tell you that sitting as a council person, alhamdulillah, as a council person, I was able to, when Sabina was talking about the young lady with the hijab, Najjar, one of the bills that I proposed resolution was actually sending a letter from the council to the State Athletic Association about the hijab issue. I could do that because I know about it. And I was able to get my colleague to be able to support it. She talked about Sister Batina and Mohammed Shukri Azan. I was able to nominate Bethina as a council member so that my colleague can vote her to be on the school board. I was able to nominate Mohammed Shukri for the executive director position. But if I was not there, not that it would not happen. I always said that not every politician is bad. Some of them are just ignorant. And I said that honestly. Ignorance in the sense that if you're not part of an issue, it's never happened to you, you don't know anyone that it happens to, you cannot speak to it. It's just common sense. If you've been hungry and been in poverty, and somebody's talking about poverty, you will see how you react to it. When anti-Sharia bill happened, we all jump up because we know about it. The same thing with the politicians. If they don't know about it, they cannot support it. And that's why it's important for us to make sure that we're educating the people that are representing us and making sure that they know what the issues are and they know that we're watching and that we're voting. It's very critical. And I will tell you, everybody, I don't care what position, wants that vote. And if they know you're a voter and they know that you're somebody that will ask them, they will listen. So let's use our power. There's a lot of power in our community, our collective power. I don't think we're using it enough. And I think we need to find a way to better use it. So inshallah, join the commissions. Commissions is free, it's not an election. There's commission for everything. If you're a lawyer, there's a commission. If you're a doctor, there's a commission. If you're an engineer, there's a commission. There's a way to serve the city without being an elected official, but you can still be involved. So I'm asking you that 78%, let's increase it. Let's make it better. And I hope, inshallah, maybe in the next year or two, we have a candidate from amongst us that we can put forward, and we should put forward, because that person can be there to speak for us. Another example that I wanted to give before I give up the mic and answer your questions. When COVID happened in Nashville, and we were talking about places to do the testing and to do the vaccinations, there were a lot of options being put out for churches, community centers, but AMAC was put there. And we were able to do vaccinations in masjid. We're able to do a lot of things with our community. We're able to give food to people in the community through us. So we have a potential here to be able to be that example. In the ayah that Sabina read, we are the best of mankind because we enjoy what is right and we forbid what is wrong. And we take care of our community, and we should be the example that everybody should be emulating. And a way for us to do that, we get involved. We run for office. If we're not running, we make sure we put people in there, but we don't leave them alone. We stay engaged. We stay involved. And inshallah, may Allah make it easy. May Allah grant us tawfiq, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Does anyone have questions? I think we're going to open up Q&A now, inshallah. Yes, Brother Moj, I think he's coming to you with a mic, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Jazakallah khair for coming up and visiting us, and we already have a couple of places we want you to stay, so don't go too long. We want you to kind of stay here in Knoxville and have two homes, one in Knoxville and one in Nashville, inshallah. Everything has been so concise and so clear. Is there a connection, and I'm saying this, between like AMAC and other organizations, because we are growing? You know, we have Nashville, Knoxville, Memphis, other places, but nationally, we have a dynamic movement going on. And so is there that kind of connection on a national level that momentum is building, like Nashville is a nucleus and other places, inshallah? Jazakallah khair.
So there is, and we're working on that. What happens in Tennessee, unfortunately, is I've been in conversations and meetings with national Muslim organizers, and they know Muslims as being in California, Chicago, Michigan, New York, and they are always bypassing Tennessee. We're dismissed. I mean, our estimates are about 70,000 Muslims in all of Tennessee. But when I tell them the work that we are doing here, they are in awe that we are a active community in a very red state, in a state that's frankly has had a lot of Islamophobic legislation come out. And so people are noticing how do we do this organizing work in a smaller community with so many barriers, because we are in the middle of the Bible Belt. I mean, that's the reality of it. We don't have the same infrastructure as those larger communities have. But what we do have, to our credit, are dedicated leaders who are saying, yes, and dedicated leaders who are not just looking at issues on a Muslim basis, but on a community basis. And these kind of collaborations that we have with other local organizations. So, when it makes sense, we collaborate with ACLU. When we wrote that letter about the girl wearing the hijab at playing volleyball, ACLU took it down to the legal aspect and said, look, if you don't do this, we have the basis to sue you. So those kind of collaborations have to happen with other, let's say, immigrant organizations or voter organizations locally, with the Equity Alliance or Turk, but on the national level, there are Muslim groups that we work with. Say the Muslim Ban was one that was more of a collaboration across the country, working on that. But connecting, I think, understanding what's going on across the country, because sometimes we feel like the worst of the Islamophobia happens here, but it's happening everywhere. And people take lessons from what we're doing, but we also learn from those other organizations. So I think it's always important to have those collaborations, but know that we have power within ourselves. And I think it's amazing what we have accomplished in Tennessee.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Thank you all for coming. I have a quick question. So I notice a lot of times Muslims, when we talk about Islamophobia and issues facing Muslims, oftentimes we take like a really defensive posture. And a lot of the times the way we interact with these issues, the way we address these issues is from a point of defense. And I wonder if there are any, like a lot of the bills that were mentioned were just ones that we are reacting to. Have there been any instances, or are there any efforts by Muslim folks in office, elected officials, to introduce certain bills rather than maybe simply being reactive and defensive? Has there been much of a movement of people pushing things forward and pushing things through from within the Muslim community or Muslims who are elected officials? And if so, do we have any examples of those things? And also, how do we kind of deal with this defensive posture versus like less defensive and more just like proactive thing?
I can say it was a few years ago, I think it was more than 5 years ago, we were working with other partners and trying to get the driver's license test in Arabic. So it's currently, you can take it in Spanish, you can take it in German, but with such a large Arabic-speaking community across the state, you still can't take it in Arabic. So there was an effort there. It was unsuccessful. So sometimes to make sure that we're not always feeling defeated or reactionary, it is partnering with other organizations on bills that benefit the community. And you could find, even in the state legislature, there's only a handful of Democratic representatives and senators. But there's some really great ones who really think out of the box and how to bring bipartisan support for certain bills. So on domestic violence was probably one type of bill. And so for us saying, yeah, this makes sense, let's support it also. So we are not always seen as a community that's just defensive or reactionary or just mad at what's going on. That you should recognize that there are some things that's going on. Another, with the work with NOAA that we do, National Organized for Action and Hope. Last year, we helped rally and for more funding for social workers at schools. So now this is going to be added in the state funding formula, most likely. It was proposed. So those are things that we need to get on board. Zufat can say much more on the city level.
Yes. So alhamdulillah, we're not always defensive. I think one of the things that I was sharing in my conversation with you is how you build a relationship before issues happen. And that's how you don't look, people don't look at you as if you're defensive all the time. You build the relationship before the issues happen. And I think that's the point of us being here today and encouraging our community to say, get to know your elected officials, work with them on other issues. That's how we deal with that. In Nashville, we do that. Being part of those other organizations, talking to them all the time. We have meetings with our elected officials all the time, even on the state level. A lot of them are people that we know personally and we see. We've invited them to our mosque to come and see us at different times. We've pitched ideas to them, right? Some work, some does not work. So we are doing that. It's just that when you do see those bills that have a negative impact, you do have to push back on that. So that's how you do that. And we are doing that. Going to NOAA, going to the state of address, being part of it, having a Muslim be part of the mayor's address and all of that. That's a way for us to say we are a resource. Use us. We're part of this community. And you will notice that when I introduced myself in the beginning, I told you that I'm with AMAC. I told you that I'm an elected official. But remember, I also told you I'm a CPA. I'm with Maryam Medical College. I do that on purpose. Because oftentimes when it comes to Muslims, especially Muslim women, they want to put us in a corner and only want to talk to us when it's Muslim issues. So I make a point to say Muslims have a lot to offer in this community. So use us for those issues. So I think you are on the right track, but it all depends on all of us. It's not going to, it has to be more than those of us that are already doing it. We need the community to join us in this effort, to be more active in the community, to join boards, to be engaging, to go to meetings, to go to board meetings. That's how we do it, so that when something come up, then we can fight it together. And if you have something that you think as a community we should push and put forth, bring it along. We'll be glad to sponsor it, either at the local level or state level. We're open to all of that. Some of the bills that I've joined has, they're not all religious connotation, except for the one with the hijab, that resolution. And I was proud to sponsor that as a Muslim, because I can speak to that. But when it comes to COVID and how it's affecting the community, when it comes to some other issues, housing is something that I'm very big on. It's what I work on the most, and education. Because to me, that is everybody's issue. That's everybody's issue. And so that's how we do that.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. I have a question. So this is one of the things that I personally struggle with is you're talking about building relationships with our leaders, these kinds of things. And on the other side of that, I might see one of our, whether it's even one of our city officials or law enforcement or someone who I'm actually like repulsed by, maybe, right? I see them, I'm like, I'm not even going there. And yet I'm supposed to try to build a connection in a way that I understand we can maybe have a conversation one day about something that will positively impact our community. And it's troubling, like how do I end up building a connection without sacrificing my values, right? And I think it's something, I really struggle with this, especially things like law enforcement. I mean, we've had some very personal, specific reasons why we're like, no. And at the same time, I understand the importance of their presence in a lot of ways. And I don't want to be that, oh, here, buddy, 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 because I don't feel that way. And at the same time, if I'm totally like, I don't know. So how do we kind of find the balance in that and be able to build it without sacrificing something that means something to us?
I think you just said the word balance. I think that's the key. And that's one of the things I love about Islam, the balance in it. So I'll give you a couple of examples. If you look at my voting record at the community level, at the local level, I've had votes that I support money to police. I've had some that I said, no, we're not going to give you that, depending on what the issues are. We work with the police department. Sabina does. We do a training for the cadets, wherein they come in and we talk to them about interacting with the Muslim community. This is something we have to do. Because if they're going in to arrest a Muslim live in this community, right? So if they're going to go in, they need to know how to interact. So we cannot say, no, we don't like them, we're not going to deal with them, because like it or not, we will come in contact with them. Like it or not. This is where we live. And so the way you do that is that I'm not saying be friends and be buddies with your elected officials. I'm not saying go to their home and have dinner, right? I'm not saying that. You could do that with the ones that you want. I'm not saying that. But the issues that you want to get across, you need to find a way to get it across. If you don't want to do it in person, you can do it by email. You can do a phone call where you just stay to the issue that you want to discuss. But I bet you, if you call your elected officials every other month or every 2 months, they will remember your name. If you send them an email on an issue on a regular basis, they would know who you are. That is building a relationship. And so you don't have to agree with everything someone does to be able to make them accountable to you. And one thing that I tell people is that you have to think about this, and those elected officials, me, work for you. We work for you. You pay our salaries. So you are our bosses. You are our bosses. You should be able to tell us what you think we should do. You should be able to tell us what we're not doing right. It's your money. That's taxpayer money going there. So use it. Use it. Use it.
Agree with everything Sister Zufat said. Also, I think that, that is a real issue. And I think, a lot of times people look at our local officials and we don't see ourselves in them, right? We see a certain demographic of people that don't represent us. And I think that that's why it's really important that we're putting an effort into pushing people into power that do represent us, right? Who do look like us, who wear hijabs, or who have melanin, right? Like, I think that that's really important. And I think that's why we have to put an effort into being involved in elections, right? Being involved in if we don't run, running someone who represents us and who actually, not only do they look like us, but they speak for us or with us. They don't try to speak for us, but they speak with us and they fight with us for those issues. I think that's what's important. We've had enough of just trying to get by with what we have. It's time for us to step up, We're close to time. We have 5 minutes. Should we take one more question before we close out, inshallah?
Assalamu alaikum. I came late. I would like to know y'all's name and what y'all do in the community.
Okay, inshallah. Yeah, thank you for that question. So my name is Maryam Hussain. I am a member of the Voter Education Fund, which does a lot of work to help basically disenfranchised people get re-enfranchised, right? So whether that looks like, getting people registered to vote, helping people get access to resources that they need. We do a lot of things like that. I also work for a nonprofit in East Knoxville called SEED, where we basically train young adults in skill sets, basically try to help them get access to better paying jobs. We grow food in community gardens and try to, help to kind of fix the food disparities and the food access and all of that. So alhamdulillah, that's what I do. I'll pass it on.
Assalamualaikum. So my name is Sabina Mohyuddin. I'm the Executive Director of the American Muslim Advisory Council. And we're a statewide organization that works to empower the Muslim community through civic engagement, community building, and media relations. So, we work to uphold the civil rights of the Muslim community in Tennessee.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zufat Swara. I'm a former board chair of AMAC. I'm currently still a board member. I was a community activist for many years, serving with many organizations. I was the state president of the Business and Professional Women of Tennessee and some other organization with Advocacy. And then I got tired of going to legislators to tell them what to do for me when I realized that I can make a better decision myself. So in 2019, alhamdulillah, I decided to run for office. And with Allah's mercy and people in Nashville, I was voted. I'm now a council member with the Nashville government.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm seeing that AMAC does the advocacy and getting the word out that everybody can vote. Now, like with a lot of our younger generation and youth coming up, and especially like the way they want to keep the clergy, religion beliefs out of government spaces. Is there anything that AMAC is doing, maybe workshops or anything for the youth to get them interested into being active in that role in voting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why we're here today. And we believe that really to have an actively engaged community, masjids have to take leadership on it. And so, because I am based in Nashville, a lot of the work is around there. But one of the kind of fun get out the vote events that we had was go vote with the imam. And I had a picture of it. Of a convertible, idea that voting is fun. It's endorsed by our religious leaders, and so you should go do it. And I know our community, we have segments of the community who aren't sure, should we vote? We don't agree with the morals of the candidates. And so when the imam helps them process, well, how does this work and how can you stay true to your faith yet still vote and be actively civically engaged, that goes a long way in getting people really out to vote. So I think this got to be a collaboration. It is the future for our community. Right? Our children are growing up here. When I talk about the work that I do, I think about, because I was born and raised in Nashville. So I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and what I had to go through, I don't want to see my children go through that. I want them to just live their life. I don't want them to have to worry about Islamophobia or discrimination. I don't want that for it. I certainly don't want it for future generations. So that's why we have to work now at this moment, and it's for our future generations.
And AMAC does have a youth leadership program that we do, where Sabina leads it, and we work with our institute, where we actually have a group of youth go through our leadership program. And so that's another way that we're doing it. I will say that as parents, you also have a role to play. What I've noticed in our community is because we are not interested in what is going on here, and please, pardon me for saying this, we are more interested in what goes on overseas than we are here, oftentimes. And that's what our community does. And what we have to understand is that I'm a Nigerian. I've been in this country for about 30 years. My children were born here. They're not going to go to Nigeria and do anything. This is their country. So me talking about Nigeria all the time has nothing to do with them. And I think we, as the parents, have to let them understand that this is their country. We have to be vested and interested in what happened in this country. Even if we don't care, it's going to impact our children. And if we have interest, they will have interest. And so we have a role to play. The mosque has a role to play. And AMAC, inshallah, will continue to do our part. But we cannot do it by ourselves. That's where we're going across the state to say, look, this is a time for us. If the Bible Belt, if Nashville, where 10 years ago we're fighting Islamophobia and anti-Sharia bill, can vote for a Muslim woman, and we're not talking district vote where I need 2,000 votes. I got 34,000 votes. It was a county-wide vote. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. The work we've been doing for the last 10 years, I can see it happening. I can see that we're moving things. We should not regress. We need to keep moving, and we need your help to do that. Jazakumullah khair.
Okay, inshallah, I think we're going to close out, inshallah. I'm going to ask Brother Abdullah to close us off with a small dua, inshallah. Again, just want to thank everyone for coming out. Really appreciate your presence with us tonight.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله لا إله إلا الله الحليم الكريم سبحان الله رب العرش العظيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Ya Allah, we are grateful to you for allowing us to become educated, for allowing us to have access to education, to have leaders who are willing to come speak to us, who are willing to empower us, to engage with us. Ya Allah, we ask you to bless and reward our guests who've come here, who've spent their time and energy to come teach us. And we ask that we find benefit and power through everything that they've said. We ask that you put barakah into the work that they do and put barakah into their time so they can accomplish everything great through your power and your assistance. Ya Allah, we are few in this community, in this country, in this state, in this city, but allow us, Ya Allah, through your power we can be powerful, and we can make a difference, we can make great changes. So Ya Allah, allow us to make great changes for your sake, to be people who live for the truth, who enjoin that which is good and forbid that which is evil. Allow us to be tied to your sunnah and attached to the Quran, and guide each and every one of us to that which is the best. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun, wa salamun ala al-mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Lastly, there are refreshments outside. Please help yourselves. And please sign the form if you haven't.